Hey writers, it's Mrs. Wood, and this is my grammar terms handout and crash course to help you if you feel like you have a knowledge gap in understanding the terms that get thrown around whenever you're talking about grammar rules or specifically test taking rules and the exceptions to those rules when you are being tested on them on something like the ACT. So if you are somebody who needs that knowledge gap kind of filled in, what I would have you do is I'd get something to write with so you can take some notes because I'm going to go through the terms that you're going to need to know and be comfortable with as far as understanding goes in order to make sense of the more complicated stuff that's going to be coming later to be tested on your ACTs. So we've got, let's see here, 7 basic terms that I'm going to jump into. And like I said, it's a crash course, so it's going to be really quick. I'm going to go through each one and kind of give you the definition of it, an example of it. I'll tell you what is tricky about it, and I'll tell you what you want to remember about it. So this is a really surface level overview, but it's just to help you have something to connect to when these terms start getting thrown around so you don't just totally zone out when you are trying to make sense of the grammar rules you need to know. So this first page that we're looking at just has examples. It's the example page, so it's something that you can quickly refer to if it's like asking you for, identifying a pronoun. You can look at this and be like, okay, the underlined words in that box, oh yeah, those are pronouns, I'm good to go. Like it's a quick reference guide. So I'll refer back to this periodically, but this first page is just, like I said, a quick reference sheet so you can see prepositions. Oh yeah, those words. Okay, cool, good to go. So we're going to jump in. So we'll start with nouns here. So nouns are the basic one that almost everybody starts with. So if you're looking for definition, you're ready to take notes. Remember, you don't have to take notes on every single one of these. If you know you only need help with conjunctions, maybe go to that part of the video and watch that part. Or if you need me to slow down because I talk pretty quickly, hit pause to be able to write things down and take the notes as you go. But here we go. We're going to start with nouns. So nouns are going to identify person, place, thing, or idea. So it's the word in the sentence that does one of those things. So an example is coming from TLC this time. A scrub is a guy who thinks he's fly. So scrub, that is the, noun of the sentence that is focused on there. So what's tricky about a noun is that just because something is a noun doesn't mean it's the subject of the sentence. So a lot of times students will get confused when you have something like Elle eats Eggo waffles. Elle and Eggo waffles are both nouns, right? Like both of those, that's a person and the other one is a thing. Both of them are nouns, but only one of those is the subject of the sentence. So Elle is the subject of the sentence because she's the one doing something, right? She's the one eating the waffles. So that can be confusing for students. You can have multiple nouns in a sentence, but figuring out which one of those nouns is the subject is kind of a different ballgame. Figuring out who's doing something or who is feeling something, that's going to be how you figure out the subject. But noun just means it's a word that identifies a person, place, thing, or idea. So what you want to remember about that is that nouns are something you can ask for Christmas, right? Like you could get it as a present or you could give it as a present. It's a thing. It's also somewhere you could travel to. So if there's a place or a destination that you're going to, that's going to be, like if you can enter it in on your GPS or whatever, that's going to be a noun. If it is someone you can refer to, it's a person who exists, then that's going to be a noun. If it is something you can give a presentation over, that would be the idea part. That's also a noun, like the idea of, I'm going to talk to you today about love, or I'm going to talk to you today about funding, blah, 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 like whatever it is. If you can give a presentation on it, that is going to be a noun. So there's your quick rundown. That's what nouns are. When we talk about pronouns now. So pronouns are, now that we just talked about nouns, it's a word that takes the place of a noun. So you already know what the noun is, but instead of saying that word or that noun every time, a pronoun fills in for it. So Taylor Swift helps us with this one. Corey's eyes are like a jungle. He smiles, it's like the radio. So Corey, that's our noun, right? He's a person, but we're going to say he the next time we refer to him, and that's going to be the pronoun. It stands in for Corey, so you're not saying that every time. So that's what a pronoun does. That's a really simple version. Obviously, it gets more complicated because everything always does with grammar. But next example, I'm a fan of Faulkner books and anything my mama cooks. So Eric Church is telling us I'm, right? Like I'm is a contraction, I am. So I is a pronoun there. He's not saying Eric Church is a fan of Faulkner books because it's kind of weird when you talk about yourself in the third person. So I is the pronoun that does that. And when we say anything, that's the word that we use instead of listing out every possible thing his mom could cook, right? Like anything is the word that takes the place of all those different nouns. So what's tricky about pronouns is that there's so many different kinds, right? There's personal, reflexive, intensive, demonstrative, interrogative, relative, indefinite, and the list goes on. But it's easy to recognize the personal pronouns, I, me, he, she, you, it, those kinds of things. But you want to keep in mind that words like who, whom, whose, which, that, myself, himself, us, it, mine, all, any, both, somebody, whichever, all of those are also pronouns. They're taking the place of a noun in the sentence. So that's what's tricky about them. But what you want to remember about them is that the biggest ACT rules about pronouns, where you're going to have to differentiate between two, come with subject and object pronouns. So I listed those there for you. The subject pronouns, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and the object pronouns, me, you, him, her, it, us, them. So those are the ones you want to make sure you identify, like those are pronouns when you are looking at sentences in a test-taking environment. Those are the ones you're going to have to like pick between and do things with. So if you're memorizing anything, those are the pronouns that you want to have a pretty good handle on. Okay, talking about verbs. So verbs are the words that are going to express an action or a state of being. It's something that's being done. So in this example, please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. Stick, like that's what somebody is doing, right? That's what they want you to do. You are my fire. That's like the state of being example. Are, right? Like that's the action in the sentence. So what's tricky about verbs is that there's so many different kinds with so many different rules, but basically you just want to be able to identify verbs in a sentence. So the technical grammar labels are nice, right? When you can say helping verb, linking verb, transitive, like all those different things are good, but you can function with just being able to find where in the sentence the word is that tells you what's happening. So sometimes what gets confusing with this too is students hear the word predicate and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I knew what verbs are. I have no idea what means like subject and predicate. So predicate is just a term that refers to the whole group of words that tells what the subject is doing. So a verb is just a part of the predicate. So as long as you can identify, like I said, like stick, that's fine. Just don't freak out when you hear predicate and don't feel like you know what you're talking about. You will. Like what's going on in the sentence? What is the subject doing? What you want to remember about verbs is every single sentence is going to have one. And when you're trying to figure out an easy way to remember how to locate the verb, you say, who or what is doing something? That's the subject of your sentence. The who or what is doing something. What are they doing or being? That's your verb. Whatever somebody's doing or whatever somebody is being, that's the verb. That's the piece you're looking for when you're trying to find a verb. Conjunctions. So conjunctions are words that join words together or join groups of words together. So examples, maybe I asked for too much, but maybe this thing was a masterpiece till you tore it all up. So but is your conjunction. It connects the first part of the sentence with that second part of the sentence. Another kind of conjunction is the second example, since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. So what's tricky about them is what you can see in the difference of the two examples there. One kind, coordinating conjunction, if you want to know the grammar term for it, is really easy to recognize. Like that first example from Taylor Swift, those are what students are normally able to be like, yep, conjunction. The Kelly Clarkson one, since you've been gone, that's a subordinating conjunction. And those are kind of less obvious in how it's connecting groups of words together. But it's also labeled as a conjunction. So I put the different coordinating and subordinating conjunctions there. If you're memorizing things, those are two good things to memorize because when you get to the rules later about how to use conjunctions and when you need commas to go with conjunctions, knowing the difference is really going to help you there. So definitely write those down. Coordinating conjunctions are your fanboys. You've probably heard a teacher say that before. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Subordinating conjunctions are your awubis words. After, although, as, when, while, until, unless, because, before, if, since. So longer acronym, but if you memorize those, like I said, that's going to help you when you get to the comma rules that come when you're being tested. So what you want to remember about conjunctions, they don't automatically mean your sentence needs a comma. So we'll get into, like I said, knowing comma rules is a more complex thing for later, but basically students like to think, oh, conjunction, that means I need a comma. No, not always. So Billy Joel, Piano Man song, is going to help us out here. The piano, it sounds like a carnival, and the microphone smells like a beer. So in that instance, that's where you're going to have the conjunction and you're going to need a comma because we have it sounds and microphone smells. These are two things that could be sentences on their own, so you need a comma. But the next part of that song, they sit at the bar and put bread in my jar and say, man, what are you doing here? No comma needed there. Okay, so that's they sit, they put, they say. Like there's only one subject doing all of those things. So like I said, complex rule for down the road, but just know that having a conjunction doesn't automatically mean your sentence needs a comma unless some other things are happening. So Now we're going to go to adjectives. So these are the words that modify, which just means describes, adds detail, or makes more definite a noun or pronoun. So we know what nouns and pronouns are. Adjectives are the words that are going to tell us more about those words. So as an example, I had a dream about a burning house. Burning is your adjective. It's telling you more about the house that we're talking about, which is your noun, right? So what's tricky about adjectives is that they almost always appear right before their noun they're describing, like in the example above, burning house. But sometimes they can come after the noun they're describing, especially if that noun is a pronoun like someone or anyone. So normally with English grammar rules, it's going to be adjective, noun. But if you've learned any other languages, sometimes the adjective comes after the word, right? And that's what I'm kind of talking about here. There's an exception for English grammar where it's anyone capable of doing that would be easy to identify. So that capable is an adjective to tell us more about anyone, and it comes after, which isn't very common in English grammar, but does happen sometimes. So that's what's tricky about them. What you want to remember about adjectives is that they will answer the following questions. They answer what kind, which one, how many, how much. So if you're like, I don't know what this word is doing, is it answering what kind? What kind of house is it? It's a brick house. Okay, brick is an adjective for what kind of house it is. If it's answering which one, that house. That's telling you something. It's modifying the noun house to tell you which one you're referring to. How many? 3, right? 3 houses. That's telling you about the houses noun. Or how much, like, it happens to some houses, or it happens in a lot of cases. Those kind of how much words, those are adjectives. So, crash course, moving right along. Adverbs. Adverbs are the ones that are going to also modify, which remember we said modify just means describes, adds detail, or makes more definite. But adverbs are more complicated because you can modify a verb, adjective, or another adverb with these words. So, for example, because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk. So that never is telling you something about the verb in that case. What's tricky about adverbs is they can be located just about anywhere in the sentence. So I'm going to show you a couple different examples here. If it's modifying a verb, it looks like this sentence, Dustin ran rapidly from the Demogorgon. So it's showing you how Dustin ran. It's modifying that that ran verb. It can also modify an adjective. So Dustin was incredibly impressed with Susie's tech skills. How impressed was he? Incredibly impressed. But it's modifying that adjective instead of the verb in that sentence. It can also modify another adverb. So Dustin sang the song somewhat quickly. So quickly is the adverb there, and somewhat is telling us how quickly he sang it. So what you want to remember about adverbs is they're always going to answer the questions how, when, where, to what extent, and sometimes why. So how? Rapidly. When did it happen? Yesterday. Where was it? Nearby. To what extent? Like very, absolutely, definitely. Those kinds of words, a lot of times they end in ly. Those are going to be adverbs. And last one, prepositions. Prepositions are going to show the relationship of a noun to another word. So they're connection pieces. They are showing you how words in a sentence connect to different nouns. So example, Bruno Mars, I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. So with and in are both prepositions. What's tricky about them is there are literally hundreds of prepositions. There are so many. But if you can remember that usually they connect a noun to an idea, you're going to be okay. So for example, the word with, that preposition is connecting the noun man with the idea of having money, right? Like, okay, so we have man and we have money. The preposition shows us how those two ideas are related. Oh, this man has money, with some money. In my pocket, same kind of deal. We have the man, again, and we have money now, but we're telling us that the money is located to the pocket by in, like that's where it is. So that's kind of what prepositions do. They allow you to add a lot more detail and show you how these two nouns in a sentence or these words in a sentence are connected to each other. So what to remember about them, I just gave you a list of lots of common ones. A lot of times they're going to show location, like above, across, against, along, among, like where something is. Sometimes they're going to be about time, after, as, before, during, since, those kinds of things. And sometimes they're going to be just showing other relationships, about, despite, except, for, of, those kinds of things are also prepositions. So just remember, usually they come in a phrase and they're like very short, with some money, in my pocket. You can string them together and they feel longer, but normally that's how a preposition is going to work. So that was a really quick rundown of these different parts of speech and grammar terms you're going to be expected to know. So go back through, rewatch, or write down more notes for the ones that you have trouble with. Use this reference sheet to kind of help you remember, okay, yes, right, nouns, architect, design, the house. Yes, those two words are nouns. Pronouns, he, them, everything, herself. Oh yeah, those are the pronoun words. Verbs, what's happening in the sentence. Ran, could not have run, is, will arrive. Conjunctions, and, or, until, since. Oh yeah, okay, those kind of words. Adjectives, black shoes, more glitter, soggy french fries, Christmas tree, which color. Those are your adjectives. Adverbs, earlier, home, always, insanely. And prepositions, around, through, toward, on, to, those kinds of words. So hopefully that's helpful for you if you feel like these are terms that you've just never really had explained since you were maybe in the first or second grade. And I hope that gives you a better idea of what to do with them.